I want to invite Luke Lempart up from Gladly, who's an engineer here. And Luke, I meant to ask you for a fun fact about yourself that I could introduce, but I think you're a hiking guru. Is that right? You run hikes?
I do enjoy hiking. I don't necessarily run hikes, but I do enjoy good hiking.
Do you walk hikes?
It depends. It really depends. Sometimes I saunter, sometimes I walk, sometimes I'll walk at a very fast pace.
Perfect.
Depends on the situation.
Well, Luke's going to be talking about from concept to feature in under a week. So with no, and you're welcome to talk more about hiking too. Sorry to set you up that way. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think I'm going to stick to software instead of hiking, since that seems to be the general theme of the meetup. Thanks for the introduction. So what I'm going to talk about today is how we were able to use several open source, widely available tools to build a feature in a very short period of time. So about a month or two ago, we received this request from our professional services team to essentially provide custom reports to our customers, which were not currently available in the product. So we wanted to make it really easy to add new reports by our professional services team. We wanted to give our customers access to the information in a secure PCI compliant manner. And the other ask was that we have this ready in about a week. And all of our engineers were really busy with other work at the time. So we had to do all of this with the minimal amount of engineering effort possible. So in came Argo to the rescue. Who here has heard about the tool Argo? Okay, so we have a few people. If you haven't heard about it, if you haven't looked into it, I highly recommend that you check out their GitHub page. So Argo is essentially an open source container native workflow engine, which allows you to get work done in Kubernetes. We first deployed Argo at Gladly about a year ago to actually run our machine learning training workflows. So some of the things that Argo does for you is it handles S3 boilerplate. So it will, without you having to write any code, it's able to upload.
Congratulations, you won a free update.
Oh, yay. If you haven't, if you're not using Trailer to track GitHub pull requests, you should also do that. So S3 boilerplate, it allows you to reuse and compose containers in new and complex ways. It allows you to use simple, widely available command line utilities to accomplish goals without actually writing a bunch of code. And I will show you how to do that. And it allows you to easily schedule recurring tasks. So one of the things that we want to do with our custom reports is to generate them for customers on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, or maybe a monthly basis. And as I've mentioned, it allows you to build complex applications from very simple steps. Okay, lost focus there. So first, doing some setup for what we're going to do. Who here knows that Docker now has Kubernetes actually built into it on the Mac? Okay, so everybody here, awesome. So I'm not going to actually go through all these steps here. I just have them up on the slide to show how simple it is. But essentially what these steps do is deploy Argo. They deploy Minio, which is an S3-like object store, which you can run in your local environment. So we use it a lot at Gladly for testing interactions with S3. So instead of authenticating with AWS, we can store all of our objects locally. And finally, deploying a Postgres database. So all these steps you can find in GitHub in the Sagan Systems Argo meetup repository. So that's available publicly. You can download it and go through essentially the whole tutorial that I'm going to go through here. So the first thing that we're going to do is, so I mentioned we wanted to create a custom reporting feature. So we're reporting on data in a database, in this case, Postgres. So in this repo, you will find a script which allows you to generate some simple event data and then load it into the Postgres database. And then, so the next step would be to create an Argo workflow. So a workflow is essentially Argo's unit of work. I'm not going to go through the entire workflow spec, which is about 72 lines long. But the important thing to note here is how simple it is to do something, to run a SQL query against the database and turn it into a CSV file. You can do that with a feature of Argo, which is actually embedding a script into the workflow itself. So the other thing that I wanted to point out about the workflow is how simple it is to move data from the output of a container into S3 itself. So you essentially specify an S3 bucket, or in this case, a Minio bucket, into which you would like your output file to go. Any questions about that so far? So finally, we need a way to submit these workflows to the Argo tool. So we build a simple container, which essentially builds upon the Argo CLI and copies the workflow into the container. And we will then schedule it to run on a periodic basis. So our schedules are simple Kubernetes cron jobs, which I have parameterized for Helm. So you can see that I have some parameters in my cron job spec. For example, the schedule that I want the cron job to run on, the name of my report, and keep going to the wrong slide. And a couple of parameters like the actual query that I want to run. So what does my custom report actually look like? So I have a spec file which specifies the report name, a schedule. So in this example, I'm running the report 17 minutes after every hour, a schema in the database where I want to run my query against, and the SQL for that query.
This definition is specific to what we do, right?
This definition is specific to what we do. It is actually a Helm values overrides file. And I will show actually how to deploy that cron job. So you will see that variables or fields in this YAML spec file correspond to values in my cron job. So for example, the SQL. Okay, and then all I have to do to actually deploy that workflow into my cluster is run a simple helm command, which will generate a cron job based on my template using the values in that report spec file. Any questions about that so far? Okay, so I actually wanted to do a demo of this. I have, that's not it. So I actually have my Kubernetes cluster running in Docker right now, which, zoom in, yeah. Which you will see has a Minio deployment, a Postgres database running, and it actually has some of these reports already running in it. So the only thing that I actually want to do right now is use that command. To deploy my report. actually, it's 42 minutes after the hour. So let's deploy it. To run in a minute. So I can see that there is now a cron job scheduled to run in about a half a minute now. And we'll see what happens when that actually runs. So while I'm doing that, I just want to kind of show you that, so the Minio UI I mentioned, Minio is an object store, which is S3-like, meaning that you can run, you can execute the same commands against Minio that you could against S3. So in Minio, I created this bucket called custom reports, which currently, as you can see from the Minio browser, oh, my job actually ran. Oh, whoops, sorry. I like my fonts really small. Okay, so it's still, oh yeah, it ran. Okay. So if I look into the Argo UI, I will see that I actually had this report run about 10 seconds ago. That was my workflow. And I can look into this custom reports directory. And actually, I think it's actually been running for the past few minutes. So I can see in here that I have a bunch of directories that were generated by the Argo workflow. And there's a bunch of data files. So if I click on one of these data files and download it and then open that up, oh, I don't think I made my sacrifice to the demo gods either. Oh, there we go. There is the results of running my SQL query in my cluster on a scheduled periodic basis, which I can now download and share with my customers. And so the way that we actually do this is we in our front end, we have an endpoint which is authenticated, and it basically lists all the contents of one of these S3 directories and allows our customers to download it. I'm not going to get into that. I just wanted to show how we're able to generate, run these queries, and easily be able to configure new ones. Questions?
Can you just say again what functions Argo is performing?
So yeah, Argo is, let me go back to that slide. So the functions that Argo is providing for us is, so it handles the S3, the uploads to S3. So the script file that I showed you, as you can see, it's outputting data to a temp directory in a file called data.csv. So what Argo does for us is it actually tars and zips that file up, and it moves it to the S3 bucket that we have specified in the output artifact spec. So this is a very, very simple use of Argo. I mentioned that we use it for running our machine learning workflows, which are much more complicated and have many more steps than the single one of running a SQL extraction. So in fact, our machine learning workflows would run the SQL extraction as the first step, and then operate on the CSV files that are extracted from the database. So we would have further steps like a data transformation, the actual model training step, and then copying that final model artifact into another S3 bucket.
It sounds like the use of Argo essentially made it simpler to use certain. Like you would probably be able to achieve this with plain container and like some.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We could have definitely built an entire application by either writing Python or Go code, using a Postgres driver to extract to query the data, write our own code to write that CSV file, and then move it to S3. But Argo already provided the framework for us to be able to do all of this. Again, just writing. So it actually boils down to just 5 simple lines of bash script. So so the code that we actually have to run this is a little more complicated since there's a bunch of monitoring involved. So we're writing all sorts of statistics about how long it takes to do this extraction, whether it failed or succeeded to Datadog. I basically, so inside of this Argo meetup repository, I extracted kind of the crucial components so that you can follow along yourselves without worrying about our application details. Anything else?
So does Argo itself provide the notification layer, or did you have to build it?
So we built the notification layer, which is also, so writing metrics to Datadog is also really simple. It actually, so in this case, it's also done in a bash script, and it's about 3 or 4 lines of bash code. Any other questions? That's all I got.